Hello, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. Good evening, HA. Thank you for moderating my stream once more. Sorry for missing out the stream last week, but the cold struck me down and you can maybe hear it still in my voice. I try to keep the sniffling and sneezing and coughing to a minimum, and I hope I remember to switch off my microphone. Hey ZD Radar, nice to have you back on the stream. Of course, it's raining. Yeah, it is raining, and it's raining hard, and I don't know why, but I think it is always the problem with when it's getting warmer in spring, then I always catch a cold. No problem if it's cold in winter, but in spring I always get my spring break cold. Anyway, today we're doing Horseshoe Curve, a stream that is dedicated to Vitty V for Vitty, who was nice enough to donate this DLC for our channel here. Thank you very much for that, and we will be playing this actually very nice DLC. Before we start, never forget that we are just playing a computer game here, that everything that is discussed here as even though we are trying to get into the details so that it feels real or as close as possible to feeling real, it is just a game and we're not doing anything, and so please stay away from the real railway stuff. Don't interfere. It is a dangerous place and dangerous things to do. Already in the game, Horseshoe Curve is a freight DLC in the United States. The Horseshoe Curve itself is world famous. It is a landmark. It has its own visitor center for rail enthusiasts to take pictures, and it is a DLC that is made by Skyhook Games, what is the first and only DLC from Skyhook Games that I own now. And well, Skyhook did the Bauer 187, and I have to admit that this put me off from buying any more Skyhook Games products, but I have to admit, after I've played the Horseshoe Curve, it is a really nice DLC, and it is worth buying and worth playing, so kudos to Skyhook Games for building that one. There are some issues, like on every DLC, especially with the dynamic brakes on this locomotive, but still. Let's turn on the service before we forget it. CD Radar, last Sunday I actually travel on ICE for the first time in my life. Nice to hear that. I was on, I think, five different ICEs this weekend, with a very condensed trip, and it is nice traveling, but our top speed was only 180. All right, what kind of an ICE train was it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I always prefer the old one, the ICE ones. I think they have the best seating. But this is only my private opinion. Okay, what are we doing today? It was probably 3 between Wien and Linz. Ah, alright. Well, I think the ICE 3 is the prettiest train out of the line, but it has the worst seating. But this might be just due to my ratio of shoulder breadth and leg length. We're playing the Evo or GEV, the Evolution series locomotive, General Electric, one of the 2 big American locomotive manufacturers, General Electric or EMD. If you look at the Sandpatch grade DLC, with which a lot of us got into this game, actually, you will find EMD locomotives, the Jeep SD38, the SD40. We had it on the Sherman Hill Stream, an SD70 ACE, what is an EMD locomotive, and from Sampage Grade you remember most probably the AC4400 CW locomotive, and the Evolution series is more or less the predecessor, the successor, so that what came after, right? So the other way around, the AC4400 CW is the predecessor to those Evolution series locomotives, and they are very popular. Almost every Class 1, or I think every Class 1 railway carrier in the United States owns a lot of them. So this ES means Evolution series, 44 means they are rated with 4,400 horsepower. AC in this context means we are running on traction motors that are powered with alternate current. And you might remember playing on the Cajon Pass locomotive that is named almost identically. It's also an Evolution series locomotive, 44, but not AC, but C4. What is the newer version? This locomotive here on the Horseshoe Curve that we are playing today is or came into existence and service in 2005 around, and the other one is like 5 or 6 years younger, the one that we know from Cajon Pass. It is not an AC at the end, but an C4, and the C4 telling us for the BNSF version on the Cajon Pass that it has only 4 traction motors, whereas we on this locomotive we have 6 traction motors, 1 on each axle. The other one has 6 axles as well, but only the outer ones on each truck or bogie have a traction motor. What is supposed to be advantageous when it comes to wheel slip protection, but I don't really know if it is like this, and it might be actually what the carriers prefer. So this one that we have is a traditional one. We have 6 axles, 3 to each truck, and all of them are equipped with traction motor and AC traction motor. This is why it is an ES44AC, and it has this really beautiful Norfolk Southern livery. We're playing an ethanol train or ethanol train, a train with tank cars, and we are running more or less the whole length from Johnstown to Altoona, all in Pennsylvania. So I started it, even though I did not want to start it with the weather protection, but it doesn't matter. Just have a first look. I wanted to restart the service anyway, so just have a look at where we are. This is our locomotive. From the outside you can see there are a whole lot of them are in this yard, Johnstown Yard. And first of all, I really have to say that the scenery is modeled greatly. So it is really fun looking out of the window and enjoying the scenery. And this is the yard here. The town Johnstown is around the corner there, and track wise this DLC has a lot of branching lines, different pathing. That is actually happening a lot. What we don't play, what we can see over there, is that there is railway tracks from a different railway carrier coming in. So this part here actually is part of the CSX, or we know from Sampage grade, not the same subdivision, but this track stuff belongs to CSX actually. But we're not getting to this part, we are going into the other direction. There is also some branching lines where you can load coal, a bigger branching line where you have to go very slow, where there are no signals actually. And there you can pick up coal, like here, this southern branch to Winberg, I think is the name of the mine. What I wanted to do, I don't want to use dynamic weather today. I want to have it clear so that we can see the signals. That is important for me today, because we want to have a look at the signaling. The screenshots that they have for the loading screens, they are actually usually quite nice, I have to say. So this is our train, 8,947.3 tons, 87 cars. With the tank cars, you typically have a covered hopper car between the tank cars and the locomotives switched in between. So those are 2, and we have the, obviously then 5 locomotives, 3 at the start and 2 at the end probably. This is our length. This is our way that we have to go Johnstown to Juniata Loco Shops in Altoona. When you start a service in the Horseshoe Curve, never forget the first thing that you do typically is hit the banking COMM button, because there is a glitch that you cannot really activate the banking COMM properly anymore after you have used this generator field switch to turn it off, so that your command stand is listening to you actually. So keep that in mind. There are some workarounds to have it work again, but typically first thing is banking COMM on. Then we have to cut in the brakes and to switch our independent brake here to lead. We do that like we did this on the AC4400 CW and Sampatch grade. Cut in, lead, F3, F4 and then F6 for save the changes. And then we can exit again. Then we can put the independent to full and release our auto brake, and then we can see the equalizing reservoir is filling, and along with the equalizing reservoir our pre-filled brake pipe going to close to 90 here, and at the rear probably as well, to see if our locomotives are actually pitching in. We can use, oh, we actually got a Union Pacific one working with us. Got substituted. There was talk on the forums about this happening. This is the rear end of our train, 2 locomotives. So put the rear end number 3 camera here so that we can see if our locomotives are following suit. If you want to know if your rear locomotives are listening to you without applying power, you can always see that here. If the banking COMM is on, then you should see the reverser handle in, and if you then switch the reverser to forward and it follows suit on the rear end locomotive, then you know the rear end locomotive will help you and pitch in. Always on the leading locomotive on the rear, because the game is simulating a second driver like Hank. Warning devices can be turned off, although this box here insinuates that you can't, and you can turn on the number lights. What you can't do with the external cameras, what is a bit sad, is to turn on the rear headlights on your locomotive on the rear, and also not the number lights on the rear end, so you would have to walk back there, what is obviously a bit annoying if your train is that long. Let's see if we can get this train moving. Looks quite good. You can see it here on the green bar that we are applying some effort. The locomotives on front that are directly connected are pitching in, and the locomotive at the rear as well. So that works out. The first signal that we are getting is a red over a yellow, with the yellow on the bottommost signal head. We have seen this in a couple of signaling systems. It is a restricting. And a restricting here means we have to go 15 miles max through the interlockings, always on site. As soon as we are out of the interlockings, we can accelerate to 20. Always on site still until we get to a more favorable signal, and as soon as our nose passes the more favorable signal, then we can go according to this signal. But first we have to stick to the restricted 15 through the switches. We can see it on this diagram that we are actually going through switches that have a line speed of 15. So this is why they are setting on restricting. One word about the distance counter. There is, you can see it here, distance setup number 4. You can punch in numbers for the distance counter. You can make it count down, and you can make it count up. But if you do that, you will see that it is not really working as intended. The best what I have found out to make it work anyway is I have to switch to my Excel sheet for that. I have played around a bit and punched in different numbers like 1,100 and 10,000 and checked what the distance counter made out of it. And it was always about this factor, 3.281. So I punched in our length, 5,340.5, divided it by this factor, and ended up with a figure of 1,637.7. So if I punch in 1628 in our distance counter here, what was it again? Not that I forget it. 1628. So let's try this here. Modify preset. No. 1628. And it should be the correct number. Let's see that we don't lose too much speed. We can go with 15. And then you can switch here between count up and count down. It is set to count down at the moment, but it is not working if you just leave it by that. Save the preset, count up. So you have to switch it once and once back, and then it should actually work. We will see that as soon as we are through the switches, we will give it a try. How do the locomotives communicate? Radio or cable or something? I think this is done by radio. This is why they are simulating it here on our radio, on our cab radio. This is the device that we are using to talk to the dispatcher as well. What is nice, you can see the alerter actually shows the count up, not the count down, until it alerts you. Now let's say distance start, and you can see it is counting down from the figure that is shown on the pause screen here. But we had to divide it by this weird factor to get there, and we will see how close we get to the point when we are actually getting the new limit on the pause screen. There is a train coming, that's why I am switching the headlights to dim. You can see it counting actually. Yeah, how do you prevent to not communicate to locomotive of other train? That is a good thing. The point is that what is simulated here suggests that there is actually a human driver on the lead locomotive at the end. So you would just tell your driver, call him by his name or whatever, so a person can actually distinguish whether those commands are for him and not for someone else. Whether they are communicating on different channels, I don't know. Maybe they do that as well. But since what is simulated here is actually a human-to-human communication, I guess it should be possible to figure it out whether your own engineer is talking to you or the engineer of the train that is just coming from the other direction. Headlights back to bright with ditch lights, even during day. Again, we should have some lights on the rear end of the train, but we can't do that with the external cameras, and I was too lazy to walk to the end of the train and back to the front end again. It is okay-ish because we have an end of train device, probably not. Yeah, we have one. So this is flashing red. We don't necessarily need to have lights on then. We are still in the 15 limit here, you can see it. Our distance counter is counting. Just trying not to go too fast. The train is long. You can see this cab has a cab signaling aspect display unit that uses position light cab signaling. It always reminds me of those plush dice that people used to hang to the rear view mirrors in their cars. It's about the same position, and it is unfortunately not working here. It is just modeled, but it is dysfunctional. Let's see how good we are with our distance counter. It is still counting and we are still not through the switches, so that is okay. If you want to know more about how the game simulates the second driver on the lead locomotive at the rear end, you can watch our fully fueled director's cut video on Sandpatch Grade. There we discussed it a bit more in depth. Now we are out and the distance counter is not completely at the end, but this is because we talked a bit too long until we actually activated it. So in general it works in a way that you can work with it. Again, because the last signal that we saw was a restricting signal, we are out of the interlockings now and we can accelerate to 20 miles, but we still have to stay below the 20 miles until we get a more favorable signal. We cannot just speed up to line speed 40. We have to stay below the 20 and still go on site. Signaling wise, you might know that Norfolk Southern on its mainland has a signaling system that does route signaling, like the route signaling on Union Pacific that we had on the Sherman Hill stream a couple of weeks ago. But We are here on the Pittsburgh line that connects Pittsburgh with the East Coast, and that was before before it got bought, or before it was bought by Norfolk Southern. It was owned by Conrail, so this is ex-Conrail territory, and Conrail used a speed signaling system, not unlike the NORAC signaling system. Well, obviously there are differences, but we'll see a lot of similarities. This signal is obviously a more favorable one, but it is not for us. It actually belongs to the track on our right, or to our right, and our signal is this one. But it is green, what is nice, so it is a signal that allows us to go back to line speed. But I told it, or I said it in the beginning, we have to wait until the tip of our train has passed this signal, and then we can actually accelerate. So I don't know what you think about it, but I think the scenery in this DLC is really nice and really great. I was reluctant to buy this DLC, not only because it was Skyhook who did the Baureihe 187, but because I thought, well, another US freight route. But I have to admit, I would have missed out if I hadn't. Well, I did not buy because Witty gifted it to our channel, but without it I would have missed out. It is really a nice DLC that has a lot of options pathing wise, and it is extremely nice to look at. So you can see the track limit is 35 here. I know that it drops to 30 at the next signal, or past the next signal. Since we were a bit slow in the beginning, we got a clear signal here already, so that we can go full line speed. When I played this service this afternoon to check out what signals there are inside it, I got an approach signal instead of a green one, so I was restricted to go with maximum 30. Now we can go a bit faster. Here this is again a reminder that we are going 35 as a freight train. The faster limit is for passenger trains, obviously. Passenger trains are not in this DLC, unfortunately. There are actually no layers coming in. In real life, I think there should be some Amtrak trains running here. Sharing track with the freight trains of Norfolk Southern. What was the name of this river, AJ? Do you remember? Conmore? Conmore River? Something like this, I guess. The mountain range that we are going through are the Alleghenies, or are the same? You don't have a clue, AJ? Okay. What are the same mountains that we know from the sand patch grade? So more or less, if you want to travel from New England to the Chicago area, you have to get through the Alleghenies. So I think around the next bend there will be the next signals. It's always nice if you have some route knowledge and know where the next signal is, in case you happen to get an approach signal that orders you to be ready to stop at the next signal. It's always good to know where the next signal is, so that you don't get surprised. And here they are. Ours are still green over red. On the other track you see a yellow over yellow. We'll just see what this is. It is an approach slow signal. We will get to that in the presentation as soon as we have passed South Fork, I think. So I will let the speed slowly drop to 30, because in a couple of yards there will be a restriction to 30, if I'm not mistaken. So I just set the throttle to a notch where I'm gradually losing speed until I am at 30 or 29, and then I throttle up a bit so that we don't lose more speed. Again, you can see that there is actually one Union Pacific locomotive substituted in. Here I think is the reduction to 30. Did I miss to turn on my lights? Anyway, it was the reduction to 30 here. And we're just at 29, what is perfect. South Fork is the junction where you can diverge to this coal loading area. What is a bit a tedious thing to do. Those services are always limited to 20 miles, and you're always struggling to keep your speed below the 20 miles when running downhill. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to talk about in this stream here, don't worry, it is just a itsy bitsy small thing, but usually you need to have some idea of how fast your train will accelerate when going downhill and how hard it is to push the train uphill. And for that, what I always do to get a general idea, I look onto this screen here, and here I can see how many locomotives I have typically. Well, you'll get the cars, but you can guess how many of them are locomotives. It's typically 80 tank plus 2 covered hoppers and 5 locomotives, like here. And this is your formation then. If you don't know it, then you can just look at your train and find that out. And then you have the combined mass of 8,946.9. It is already Well, it is a different number that I have here, but this does not matter if this is on the 10 a bit different. And then I always divide this figure through the number of locomotives that I have, and then by 1,000 once more, and then I have a figure like 8.1.8, 1.5, 3.1, and 2.0 is more or less an average ratio for that. Everything that is below the 2.0 should be a train that is quite easy to handle, and everything that is more than the 2.0 is a train that is really hard to handle in a descent and really hard to be pulled up. So this works quite well because those locomotives are all rated to 4,400 horsepower. Obviously, it's a different thing if you have the cheap 38-2s, but for the longer services with those locomotives, it does not matter if they get substituted by a Union Pacific version of them or by an AC4400 CW from a different DLC. They are all more or less rated to 4,400 horsepower always, and then you have a general idea, or at least I have a general idea if I do it like this, and this gives you a hint of about how heavily you have to yank in your dynamics when going downhill and stuff like this. We are on a train with 1.8, or is a quite conveniently trained, or train that can be handled quite conveniently. I'm not quite sure if this is a specific of this DLC or if this is something that happened in the core game. I have the impression that actually this aliasing on containers and hoppers got better. It is not so obvious here because it is still aliasing quite a lot, but on the containers it looks less conspicuous than it used before, in my opinion. So I don't know whether this is something that Skyhook just did better than everyone else, or whether there is some sort of core improvement. What is also nice is if you look on those computer screens in this cab, they are really pristine. There are no flickering lines. They are just super solid and nice to look at. So, soon as we are seeing this building, we know that we are getting close to the South Fork. We are still getting a clear here. So we can just go on with our line speed. I think after the junction the line speed will actually increase. Yeah, it will increase in 2 steps up to 45. Again, we will have to use our distance counter. Even if the distance counter has counted to 0, you have to press distance stop, otherwise it will not start again. So in case you are wondering, so we are getting into a 40. Distance start. Let's see how good this works out. The next increase from 40 to 45 won't be so interesting because we will be hard put to accelerate our train from 30 to 40 anyway. This is the junction. On this diverging track here you go to the coal branch into this side valley, passing a yard. You see, there is already the next increase. Oh, did the sign not say 40? Or was that for the passenger trains? I thought the 40 was the lower number. Obviously, the limit is only 35. At least the game thinks so. At some point during our trip, we are running below US Highway 22, I think the number was, from Cincinnati to Newark, New Jersey. So let's see how good we are. Now we are in the 35. I thought it was 40 according to the sign, and our distance is almost at 0. So it works good enough with a little safety margin. We can accelerate to the 35 at least. Now we've used up our distance counter, but you can see we are already past to the 45, and then to the 50 we can almost just accelerate through. At this point, maybe the presentation about the signaling system, huh? Before we get to Cresson and actually see some worse signals, let's talk about how they are supposed to be. Norfolk Southern signaling, but we are talking about the ex-Conrail territory of Norfolk Southern. Obviously, they did not replace all the existing signals, but the signals are used by Norfolk Southern and with the old meaning. So they are using the speed signaling system that Conrail was using on those tracks. What do we have here? How do we fill our matrix for that Norfolk Southern ex-Conrail territory signaling? I won't go back to the Federal Code of Regulations 49. You know that we are required to use a green light for a go signal, for a signal that allows us to travel with line speed, or what it is called in the rules of Norfolk Southern, authorized speed. The red one is the one that tells us we have to stop, and the yellow light is supposed to tell us that we either have to go with restricted speed or that we have to expect to stop at the next signal. That is what we have from the code, from the Federal Code of Regulations, and we have it in this signaling system as well. This signal indicating restricted, we have that in a lot of systems. If the yellow is at the bottom, it is a restricting. If the yellow is at the top, it is an approach. The restricting speed, we have talked about this at the beginning of this video, is 15 in interlockings. As soon as the whole train is out of interlockings, we are at 20, and we can accelerate to a higher speed as soon as we pass the next more favorable signal. So we are not just released after we are through the interlockings. We have to go the way to the next more favorable signal. If it is actually more favorable, then we can go according to this signal, but we don't have to pass it with the whole train. It is enough that our tip, the nose of the train, has passed this more favorable signal. As I said, yellow at the bottom is restricting, yellow at the top is approach, just like in almost every other system as well. And we have already seen that a couple of times, that with some approach signals we already have an order speed-wise. So what we have to do, we have to start dropping to medium speed. For that we need to know what medium speed is, and the speed categories, we have heard them before in a lot of other systems as well. Limited It is actually split between freight and passengers. Freight limited is 40, passenger limited is 45, and is indicated here as limited clear with a flashing green in the middle. Medium speed is 30 with a non-flashing green in the middle. Slow speed is 15 with a green on the bottommost of 3 signal heads. Those signal aspects and those speeds, we have seen them in quite a lot of signaling systems. For example, the NORAC system, we have that we move the green light downwards, down our 3 signal heads, and the flashing one is the promoted one for the limited. So this is not really new. What is not new is how we tell the engineer that he's approaching a certain signal. We put the yellow one on top. So if you have the limited clear and if you have the approach and you connect the row and the column, that you end up with an approach limited signal, and it looks just like this. Same principle, approach medium and approach slow. While with the approach slow, we do not only have this aspect here, but we have this aspect as well, yellow over yellow. What is a good signal if we only have 2 signal heads? Because with 2 signal heads, we cannot obviously do this yellow over red over green. So we do just a yellow over yellow. The flashing yellow on top is the advance approach, so we have to be prepared to stop at the second signal after the advance approach. We have seen it a couple of times in many systems, in the Caltrain system, in the NORAC system, and we have here the order to drop to limited. So as a freight train, we have to start reducing our speed. We don't have to do that within a specified margin of time. We just have to start reducing it so that we can approach the next signal with this speed here, or even a lower speed, and be prepared to stop at the next signal after the approach one. Here we have to drop to 40 as a freight train. Here we have to start dropping to 30. This principle here, we have seen that as well. If we move the whole picture, the whole aspect down 1 signal head, then we can express an indication of here medium, approach, medium. So like this signal, it tells us on the next signal we have to be at medium speed, but this signal also tells us we have to go to medium speed now. At best, pass this signal with medium speed. If we are traveling faster and we are seeing the signal, as soon as we can clearly see it, we have to slow down to medium speed. Obviously, we are not required to perform an emergency brake, or we have to start reducing our speed to medium speed as fast as it is reasonable. This is why there is the exclamation point behind the arrow. Yeah. The other sockets here for, let's say, a slow approach slow, they are not filled in this system, but we have the medium approach medium. That means medium now and medium at the next signal. Where we have this medium approach is the medium approach stop signal. We move the yellow lamp down 1 stop, and this actually makes it a bit more restricting, because we have to reduce our speed to medium once, not just any time until we get to the next signal, but once. So this is a medium approach, this is an approach, this is a medium approach medium. You can see that the rows and columns always give you the ruling principle for how the aspects are created. If we only have 2 signal heads, then we have to do this to distinguish the signal from a restricting one, right? Because the yellow is now at the bottom, and then we have the yellow one flashing to see that this is a medium approach and not a restricting signal. Same here with what happened to this medium, this middle signal head. It got melted a bit, but it is just a normal red light like every other one as well. If we have the bottommost yellow light flashing, then it is a slow approach stop, meaning we have to go with slow speed past the signal. As soon as we're through the interlockings, we can go back to medium speed, but have to be prepared to stop at the next signal. One signal of that kind we should actually encounter in our DLC, in our service that we are playing. That one here with a number plate, a red signal with a number plate, is what we have seen so far, usually a stop and proceed, meaning you have to stop and look and then you can proceed with restricted speed. If I read the operating rules correctly for Norfolk Southern at this point, this is just a signal that you can pass without stopping, but you have to be with restricted speed afterwards. This is why I put it here. Okay, this is almost everything for the color lights, but since this line here was not always owned by Conrail, but before that it was owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, the PRR, you know what we have, just like we had on the Long Island Railroad, those nice thingies, the position light signals. The position light signals, yeah. Pennsylvania Railroad territory often has the position light signals, and also in our service we will come to a point where we will encounter position light signals instead of the color light signals. But this is not a problem at all. Most of the time you can just translate them and the aspects are almost the same, with the exception that you only have two signal heads, so that you can only translate two of the color lights, and that the yellow light can actually be two different aspects in the position lights, but we will see that. The clear signal with the green on top is just the open bar. Always imagine the position light bar as a crossing gate bar. If it is open, then you can pass. This is a green one. And it is also let out in the Code of Federal Regulations, either a green light or a horizontal semaphore blade, or not a horizontal, a vertical semaphore blade, or a vertical line of lights, position lights open here. And then we just translate our lights. Red one on top means a closed gate, horizontal, and then a green one flashing and vertical line flashing. Position lights can flash as well. Medium, the same without flashing. Slow doesn't have one. Why? Because we would need the third signal head and it does not have a signal head. So a non-dwarf version position light for slow clear does not exist. But what exists is the restricting red closed bar, and then the yellow on the bottom. The restricting yellow results in a falling line from the left to the right. Yeah, we will see that the approach has a ascending line. The restricting yellow has a falling line. If you read it from left to right, it is like a closed gate that the gatekeeper lowered a bit so that you can step over and proceed with caution. The approach one is the crossing gate that is just closing. It was open and now it is on its way to being closed. This is why the approach yellow translate into this ascending line if you read it from left to right. And now we have all the aspects that we need to fill out our matrix. The stop one, obviously, top most head with the closed gate. We don't need the second one. Here, the approach yellow translates into the ascending line. The flashing green beneath it is the open gate flashing. Again here, approach yellow ascending, the green open non-flashing. What do we do with our approach slow? Obviously we have to translate the aspect that can be displayed with two signal heads only, so we will have an approach yellow over an approach yellow. And for the advanced approach, we have the approach aspect with flashing. So this is not rocket science. What do we do with the medium approach? Obviously, the red on top translates into the closed gate, and then we translate this aspect here with the flashing approach light on the second signal head. We don't use the falling one, even though it is on the bottom of our two-headed signal, but we use the approach because it is still an approach aspect and not a restricting aspect. So we have the approach yellow, the ascending line flashing, and for the slow approach, it is the same one without flashing. So you can see here we have to cheat a bit because we do not have our third head. So we distinguish between the medium approach and the slow approach just by using the approach aspect, the ascending line, once flashing and once not flashing. This restricted signal with a number plate just is the same as we have it on the color lights. We have the aspect for the stop signal, but with a number plate that allows us to proceed with restricted speed. And this is already all the wayside signaling that is not dwarf signaling. You see, in the color light signals, there is not really anything new. We have the speed signaling with moving down the green light. Ones have it flashing, ones not. And yellow at the bottom is restricting, yellow on the top is approach. If the yellow one is flashing on the top, it is an advanced approach. If it is flashing on the bottom or on the very bottom, it is just a slow approach signal. And the position lights just translate it in your head until you are familiar with it. Open gate is green, closed gate is red, ascending line is the gate that is on its way to being closed. It is the approach yellow, and the falling line is the gate that is actually closed, but someone allowed you to pass it with caution and step over it. It is the restricting yellow. What I wanted to introduce here are dwarf signals, because you actually see some dwarf signals in the yards here. You know this dwarf signal here, two lights in the horizontal fashion is the stop version of the dwarf signal. The same here, we translate this falling line is the restricting version on the dwarf signal. This is the open gate, the clear version on the dwarf signal, but because we are in a station area where everything is working slowly, otherwise we would use the overhead signaling and not the dwarf signaling, it is only a slow clear. This is why it is here. And also the approach version of this kind of dwarf signals is a slow approach. So those dwarf signals, if it is applicable, it is always slow. Slow clear, slow approach. For restricted and stop, we obviously don't need to say that this is slow because it is slow anyway. Then we have some dwarf signals that are color lights, and we are actually translating those here. Closed, red. Restricted is yellow. We will see how we do it with the approach, and the slow clear has the green one of them. Here we cannot distinguish between bottom and top, so we will have it flashing. So the one yellow flashing is a dwarf signal that tells you it is a slow approach. For all the other aspects, we need more bulbs. We need two lights even on the dwarf signals. The first one, we can have the green one flashing. A single green one flashing is because it is so associated with the limited clear that it is a limited clear as well. For every other thing we need more. If we have two lamps and both are red, obviously it can't be different. It is the stop signal. If we have red over yellow again, it is the same as the one that we have here. It is the restricting. Again, yellow on the bottom, restricting. Yellow on the top, it is approach, but because it is a dwarf approach, it is a slow approach. This is why it is here, sitting here. And green over green is a full clear signal. You can go with line speed if the dwarf's signals allow you that. For the limited one, we can have this, always taking the top two and putting them on a dwarf signal. Same here. Approach limited can be a dwarf signal, approach medium can be a dwarf signal, and here again the two-headed version, yellow over yellow, is the approach slow version of the dwarf signals. Then we have some aspects that we have not looked at so far, like this. The slow clear on the double-headed dwarf signal looks like this. This is a bit counterintuitive because you would think, okay, this is a full clear, but the full clear has two green lamps. If you have the green over red, it is just a slow clear. So what do we do with our medium clear? Is it red over green? No, it is. And CD radar, this is more or less the aspect that you said American systems are so confusing. We have the flashing red here. We have the green over a flashing red to tell us this is a medium clear. Why they did it like this, I can't really know. Maybe this is just because they developed over time, those signals, because there was obviously the option to do green over red for medium clear and red over green for slow clear, but they didn't do it. They used the green over flashing red for the medium clear. The only thing where we have some consistency is that if you replace the green one with the yellow one, yellow over flashing red, and this is actually the aspect that you get when you go from Boston Back Bay to Boston South Station. Different system, Norfolk system, but the same aspect and the same indication, medium approach on the dwarf signal. And now we have all the aspects that we need on dwarf and non-dwarf signals. What I did not put into the matrix here are the dwarf signals that look like dominoes. They are like a rectangular black box, and they can have, like the position light signals, they have two lines, or can have two lines. They are considered dwarf signals, but they actually share the same aspects as the big position light signals. At least I have not seen anything where they are different, so you can always understand them if you apply the rules that come for the wayside position light signals. And that's this signaling system, Norfolk Southern ex-Conrail. And in the DLC that we are traveling in today actually has both. It has the light signals, we have already seen them, and it has the position lights. How do I get it out again? Here, I get it out again. And we can actually go on and see what signals we will be confronted with. We are going on 45. What does it say here? 50. Just past the 50. Let the counter count. But probably we won't. No, maybe. Let's see. Maybe we have to slow down a bit before we go beyond the 45. So honestly, if I had a prize for the best scenery design in a DLC that I have seen this year anew, the prize would go to this DLC, to Skyhook Games and the Horseshoe Curve. If you wondered how long our train is, this is, I think, the exact formation coming from the other direction. You like the new German DLC? You're talking about the linke Rheinstrecke or the Niedertalbahn? I have to admit that I did not buy the new stuff so far. Because I'm a bit pissed that they always yank out their DLCs for a lot of discounted prices on Steam and not so on Epic Game Store. And since I'm playing on Epic Game Store, I am a bit miffed about this policy of cross-financing the Steam sales. The one with BR682 or something like that. Is it the Niedertalbahn then? The one with the semaphore signals? Because that must be the Niedertalbahn, right? And I think it's not 682. But something like this. The linke Rheinstrecke would be the one with the 103. Yes, semaphores. Okay. Well, I'm actually interested in the Niedertalbahn one, not only because of the semaphores, but because it's, what is it, TSG or some other third-party developer who has not delivered a TSW DLC so far. By the way, we have passed for quite some time the point where we can accelerate to 50. So you can see we have reached a point in the track where we are getting semaphore signals, and not semaphore signals, position light signals. Semaphore signals are for the Niedertalbahn. Open gate, green light, clear. And so you say they did a good job on the scenery on the Niedertalbahn. Okay, now we are at line speed. $50, $60, $60 for passengers, $50 for us, being a freight train. At this point we will be going into the gradient exactly. Tank cars, tank cars, tank cars. If someone happens to know why there is this covered hopper car between the tank car and the locomotives on either end of the train, please let me know in the comments. If that is insulation, so to make sure that the heat coming from the locomotives does not interfere with the load on the tank cars. Or if there is a different reason for that. You say it's absolutely marvelous. Every Steam review are really good, which is not seen typically. Alright. Maybe I will give it a go and buy it. Then I can make a stream about German semaphore signaling. What is actually not so difficult because it's more or less the HV signaling. You only have to translate the semaphore blades to HV signals. And that's it. At least the semaphores that are still in the rulebook. Don't know if there had been different sets of semaphore signals. So what obviously works is the substitution for the Union Pacific locomotives on the Horseshoe Curve DLC. A couple of days ago, all the locomotives on this DLC used to be Norfolk Southern black. Well, it's not so bad because it really looks great. So I am a fan of this livery with a horse, and it is also rendered ingeniously. Again, let's not get hit by the bridge. The scenarios are unique, you say? Well, then it is a good premiere for whoever built it. Those are the signals from behind. Now I can play a bit with the cameras. Okay, now we see those fences. Probably telling us that we're getting closer. $50-70 to Gallitzin. First we pass Cresson, I think. I hope we did not miss any signals while playing around with the external cameras. 79.50. I think at the next bridge we should get some signals. And before we pass Gallitzin, there should be signals, because then... Ah, you can see it. That is the first adverse signal that we're getting. An ascending line from left to right, flashing. Ascending line, yellow, approach yellow, flashing. Same as one flashing yellow lamp on the top of the signals, advance approach. And what do we have to do on our freight train? We have to reduce our speed to limited, and limited for freight is 40 in this system here. So we have to slightly reduce our speed. And have to expect to be required to stop at the next, not the next, the second signal. So the signal after the next one. Don't want the camera to be knocked about. Look at this, those housings on the hill in the distance. If that is actually a tendency that the third-party DLCs have unique scenery, then this is a good development. I can't get it out of my left pinky that I always hit the alert reset button like as if it was a CFA button. Good thing no cars are on this level crossing, because I was too late with my 14L pattern. Should have started it 15 to 20 seconds before reaching the level crossing. At the speed of 40, it is almost a quarter mile. But I'm not sure if the speed, the whistle boards are actually where they are supposed to be. Dim the headlights for the train coming from the opposite direction. And now we see we are getting an even more restricting signal. That is an approach ascending line from left to right, yellow on top, approach yellow. So we have to slow down to medium, meaning 30 after passing the signal. But look at this, this is what I mean, or what I was talking about before. Before that you had always incredible conspicuous aliasing going on those containers, and now not at all. I still have to find out if this is a core improvement or if this is just in this DLC here. Where are we speed wise? Almost at the medium speed. And then, obviously, we need to know where the next signal is so that we can prepare for being ready to stop at the next signal. And if I'm not mistaken, the next signal is the one after Cresson. No train orders, no. The sticker for train orders is here, but it is empty. I don't know how they do the traffic on the branching line to the coal mine, because there are no wayside signals. I don't know. I did not find out whether they are using cab signaling there or whether they are just using train orders, CTC or whatever. I think we're getting closer to Cresson. So I should maybe slow down a bit so that we are actually able to stop at the next signal, if that is what we are required to do. Look at this nice building in the background. And then maybe look at the signals. Let's find out. And now we can already see we don't have to stop here. We can go on because we don't have an all red signal, but we have a red over flashing yellow. And thinking back to the presentation, what was that? Red over flashing yellow. It was a special kind of an approach signal. The slowest one that you can get, it is a slow approach. That means you can go on with slow speed, 15, past this signal. We don't have to stop here. But have to go with 15 through the switches. After that we can accelerate to medium speed if we have enough room, but always be prepared to stop at the next signal because it is still an approach signal. Here you can see one of the dwarf signals that we talked about. A red dwarf signal, a stop signal in the dwarf version. Will be interesting to see if the other train still has to wait for us. When I played it this afternoon, there was a second train that had to wait before Gallitzin. Maybe we are so slow now because we took our time setting up the train that it has already left. Passing any red signal, even with flashing yellow, just doesn't feel right from my point of view. Well, good thing that there are not really any red signals with number plates that you can just pass and go on with restricting. I'm always looking for the Befehl 40-Taste when we're passing a red signal. I always want to hold down and wait for the indicator coming on. So, obviously we are still limited to the 15, the slow, from the slow approach. End of our train. Ah, there is the other one coming, see? End of our train is still not even close to the switches, let alone through it. And the train that is just passing our rear cannot be seen from the front. It's a train with covered hoppers. Oh, how short this train is. But it can go much faster than we can go because it does not need to go across a switch. Can we see it? Still can't see it. And we are still in the switch with our rear end. So I guess we won't have much opportunity to go back to medium speed after passing the switch until we get to the next signal. Never forget that we are still approaching the next signal under approach condition. We need to be prepared to stop at the next signal. CD Radar says we have on Czech railways one signal with red and flashing white. That means that you are going to occupied track. Ah, I see. That sounds a bit like a red light with the two diagonally ascending white lights that we have. Or the, yeah, the SH1 shunting signal. That is also in the British system for calling on trains. See, now the other train is coming and thinks it can overtake us. Yeah. You will see, engineer of the other train. You don't need to burn your diesel. You will have to wait and let us pass, I'm quite sure. You can see two switches still need to be passed. Oh, it's not only covered hoppers, it's actually a mixed freight train, a manifest train. Is this the Highway 22 here, by the way? Still have not really located which one it is. Well, does not really look like a highway. That one. So, are we through the switches? We are. So technically we can accelerate a bit beyond the 15, because the slow approach allows it to go back to medium speed. But since we have to stop, or have to be prepared to stop at the next signal, at any rate, there is not really a point in accelerating too hard, because the next signal is actually already over there. And we can see that the train that overtook us so boldly is now waiting, because it has to let us pass. But still, we don't know what the dispatcher is doing, whether we have to stop as well and then the other one is allowed to pass, or whether we both have to wait for a train coming from a diverging line at the site. Yeah. This is almost Gallitzin, and Gallitzin has some diverging tracks. You can see it here on the left. There's another train coming in from the Gallitzin loop. So be prepared to stop at the next signal. That is what we have to do, because the last signal was an approach. But maybe you would like to bring your binoculars here, because what can we see? We see a signal that is looking like a closed gate. That is probably a red signal, and we will have to stop. But let's... Oops, now we are caught in the boxcar. Well, be prepared to stop. But hey, no, we know that this signal is a signal that has not only one signal head, but it has a second signal head that can't be seen so easily, because it does not have a black plate underneath it. But we can see there is actually a line of lights underneath the top signal head that is indicating an open gate. So what we can see here is a red over green, and the red over green is a medium clear. That means we can go on with medium speed here, we don't need to stop. Whereas on the right track, for our poor train on the right, the second signal head is off, meaning he has a full red. So that was the point in overtaking us. Thank you, dispatcher, for letting us pass with the medium clear. And why do we get the medium clear? Because line speed is dropping to 30 here, and we can see why. Because the tracks are converging to one single track over there. How could I think that German signals are difficult? Well, I love the American signals. I love it that they have so many different signaling systems. And they always can be arranged in a matrix. So, if I am not accelerating to 30 here, the reason for that is that we are going in the descent soon. Yes, in America they have so many of everything. Yeah. Well, to be fair, if you look at Europe as one entity, then we have a multitude of different systems too, and they are just so big, right? So it is not really surprising that they have so many different signaling systems and train control systems. So why am I not accelerating to the 30 here? Because we are going in the descent now. Starting about here, the tip of our train is going in the descent. We are going through this tunnel that you can see, coming closer. And after the tunnel there is the steepest part of the whole track going into that direction. It has a gradient of 2.5 what is it, percent? And that accelerates your train badly. This is why I'm going really slow here, to be able to catch the train with the dynamic brake. And the dynamic brake, it is a bit weird on this locomotive. You have to accept that. The weirdness starts... Well, we will see that. Just do the grading at about the 12 miles maybe. And as soon as we are supposed to switch to the dynamic brake, I will tell the story about why it is weird. We've talked about this a couple of times. Grading with a long train is always a delicate thing. The tip of the train is past the summit. The rest of the train, including the center of gravity, is not. But with every yard traveled, more mass moves from the ascent into the descent. So you have to slowly reduce the throttle, and then when you got the throttle to 0 you have to wait your 10 seconds, starting like now, until you can start applying your dynamics. Otherwise you will damage your locomotive. So we have waited the 10, and then the weird thing, or the weirdness with the dynamic brakes, is that even though I applied dynamic brakes, these indicators here, they stay green. They shouldn't. The throttle should not say as a green idle. It should tell us the notch of the dynamic brake here. The dynamic brake has notches as well, and it should be indicated here in yellow. It doesn't. And it should tell us the effort of the dynamic braking here in yellow as well. We can see it here on the meter, the yellow part, telling us that we are at 30 or almost 30 kilopounds brake effort, but not on this indicator here. Then you can see I notched it to notch 1, and it is applying already those 30 kilopounds, what is often quite a lot, because you just can go between no brakes, then your train is running away, or already notch 1 applies 30 kilopounds, and that sometimes stalls your train, especially if you're running an empty coal hopper train with 6 locomotives to the down the coal branch. Then you're always accelerating, slowing down, accelerating, slowing down, and so on. And here you can see, now I moved it to 1. It climbs to 63. Now we are in a range where we can actually operate the dynamic brake here and more or less keep the train on or at a reasonable speed of 14 miles here while grading and going down this incredibly steep gradient here. You can see this is the part where we go through our own tunnel, and later on we will converge with the other 2 tracks. But even only being in notch 2.1, we are applying 70 kilopounds. You can see that this indicator here only goes up to 12 kilopounds. So on the upper end, there is not much that the dynamic brake can add. You can see I moved it to 2.8. And we are not really getting more effort. It is fluctuating about the 70. I move it even more to 3.4. Now we're getting a bit more. And quite a lot more. Now it is climbing beyond the 80, 81, 82. Train from the other direction, and now we're at 87, 86 and already slowing down. So the dynamics are really hard to handle, in my opinion. I don't know if this is prototypical, if this is how it is supposed to be, or whether this is just a bit weird. Tip of the train is out of this very steep part. But obviously now the main part of the train is in the very steep part, pushing us downward. So we can try to reduce our brake effort and have the train accelerate a bit. But we need to be careful that it does not run away. From what I've seen in the 2 times that I ran this line before, is that a train of this mass can be handled with the dynamics alone up to a speed of about 26 miles, but not faster. After that, you need the automatic brakes, the air brakes, so that it doesn't run away. But you can see, speed is climbing. I'm notching up the dynamic brake, but we are not really getting more brake effort. It is still 71, fluctuating about that. And even though I'm notching up the dynamics, we are not really slowing down. What is okay, because I want to get to a speed of about 26. But it's always good to know that you can slow down again if necessary. And between notch 3.1 and notch 7, the dynamics don't really do a big difference. So on other locomotives you can really fine-tune the brake effort with your dynamic brake, and here I'm notching it down and it is actually applying more brake effort than before. With notch 7 I had like 75, and now I'm back to notch 3.2, I'm at 83, 84. Well, obviously it always takes some time for the dynamic brake to build up brake effort, but still this feels weird. Now I'm down to notch 1.1. The brake effort is declining rapidly. The train is going to accelerate again. And then we get like those lines in the speed diagram. It's always like a curve. And this is not necessarily what we want. We want to be able to keep our train at a constant speed. Now I'm at notch 1 with the dynamic brake. They are going down. Effort of about 30 probably. And I want to get some more speed, but I want to be able to control my speed. Maybe like this. By the way, we are on our way now to the actual horseshoe curve. As you can see, easily enough on the objective indicator on the top left. Due to the nature of the horseshoe curve, where if you look at it on the track diagram, going in, going out, it is a unique part of the scenery as well, because you can look to the other side of the valley when approaching. Here you can see yellow over yellow, meaning an approach slow signal on the other line. We got a green. So the whole track is named after one curve. Well, the DLC is named after this curve. The whole track is part of the Pittsburgh line. Now my poor train is running away, even though I'm notching up. Let's hope that we can control it with the 26 miles. Because as soon as it is getting faster than 26 miles, it is running away, and I cannot control it with the dynamics anymore. Yeah. I can see that it is flipping. But I'm notching up the dynamics. And what is happening? Brake effort 60. And not 1 kilopound more. Even if I go to 80 up, now I'm getting more. Let's hope that it works to control the train. That structure to the left there is called the MG tower, or it is an old control tower that actually has been demolished by Norfolk Southern sometime between 2020 and 2021. Here in the DLC it is still in pristine condition. That little thing here. But you can find videos on YouTube about the deconstruction of that thingy. And it really looks almost like it is modeled in the game. Notch 7.1 and we're at 62 brake effort. These signals look like tramway signals. The position light signals. Yeah, that's true. We have in Germany tramway signals that look a bit like this too. It is a bar typically. Not separate lights, but a bar that is open or closed. So, now prepare for the curve. You can already see the reservoirs, because in the valley that we are running around on the curve, there are 3 reservoirs that keep the water for Altoona. What was the name, HJ? You don't have a clue, I think. Kittanning or Kittanang Reservoir or something like this. And obviously those are the 2 lower ones. And the highest one is in the curve. And here in this area is where the curve will be. The world famous Horseshoe Curve. That it took us almost 2 hours to reach. And here on the other end of the valley on the other side of the valley you can see a train coming. And this is where we are going. Oh, lights were already dimmed. You never heard about it. If you look at it on Google Maps, it is captioned world famous Horseshoe Curve. There is a highway, I think it is called the Veterans Highway, passing underneath the tracks at this point. Here you can see the Veterans Highway. There is the visitor center and the topmost part of the reservoir. And here is actually the visitors park. It's, oh yeah. Don't have the train run away. Here the visitors, and they are actually taking pictures. Sometimes you can see the flashlight. Let's see if we can control the train again with the dynamics alone. Oh well, you can see dynamics at 8, effort at 61, where it looked like I caught it. Or was it 29? It is at 28 again. That is okay because we are at 30 through the curve here. Americans consider themselves as whole world. Sometimes they do, right? Yeah, but to be fair, they are a great country. They have a lot of things to be proud of. For rail grinding, yeah. Well, 5 miles to Altoona. Let's bring the train home. We won't make it in 2 hours tonight, but we're almost done. And every time I spend too much time on the externals, I run the risk of my train running away. .30. Luckily we are already in the area where we can go 35. So I can run the risk of controlling the speed with the dynamics without touching the air brakes. So I did not touch the air brakes on the way down here. When you try to use the regular tactics of applying dynamics until you can't control the train anymore and then adding some air brakes, bailing off the loco brakes until you have a steady scenario and then use the dynamics for fine-tuning. This is what you would usually do on Sherman Hill, on Cajon Pass. Here I have not managed to do this so far. I always ended up in a scenario where I was over braking and then over accelerating again. And if you don't want to do a running release, then you are stuck with a lot of air brakes. Yeah. Let's see if we can control this. When do we have to slow down to, what is it then, 25, before we get to Altoona? Maybe we manage. The weirdest thing that I have seen with the brakes, if you apply the independent brake alongside with the dynamics, you actually get more brake effort. Let's try if that actually works still. If that can slow down the train. Yeah, this actually works. I'm applying the independent brake alongside with a dynamic brake. What, according to all what I know about train brakes of that kind, should never work, because applying air brakes on the locomotives should actually cancel out the effect of the dynamics instead of amplifying it. Well, here it amplifies it. Let's have a look at the scenery. The scenery is much nicer. There's a ballpark. And this is Altoona. City radar, we have in Prague one curve for trams that is also very similar, with going 180 degrees. It leads uphill to the castle. I think it is the curve with the smallest radius in the world, if you consider Czech Republic as well. I definitely do. Oh, I will have to research that. How fast can you go through that curve then? Already I was late with my honking. And my train is running away on the last few steps. Look at this. Let's see if that trick with the independent brake works again. Can I stop it from running away? Yeah, I can. That is actually the weirdest behavior of locomotive brakes. Do I need to slow down? Yeah, I need to slow down to 25. With the dynamic brakes full on and the independent brake. Ooh. Well, this will not earn us a realism prize. But it works. You can really fine tune it with the independent brake. Well, here you might want to have another look on the brake physics. The scenery is really award-winning. The brake physics, phew. Now that I've got the dynamics out of notch 8, they actually applying more power. And we're still a bit in the gradient. We have to control our speed. But we're almost there. This is already the stretch of track that leads us more or less in a straight line into Juniata, or is it Juniata Yard? Look at that building to the left. They actually have a lot of unique architecture in this DLC. Bonkf. Now the cars hit us from behind. Where did it go to, my nice building? Here it is. Do we have to slow down once more? No, I don't think so. The 15 is after our stopping point. Just make sure that we're not speeding on the last bit. This railing of this bridge is obviously a nightmare for anti-aliasing. Well, yeah. But you see it here as well. You always end up in over braking, over accelerating. Now I'm not paying enough attention because I'm playing around with the externals, so you can do it better than this. I give you that. But apart from that, this locomotive has a tendency to do that. Now, this is one of those domino-style dwarf signals that I have been talking about. Again, yellow over yellow, approach slow. Approach slow, contrary to slow approach, does not order you to slow down at once to slow, but to be prepared to slow down to slow speed at the next signal. For now, we just have to slow down to medium speed. Well, in the setup, it does not do any stopping here. So I don't really know what a realistic brake curve for stopping a train of that kind will be. I always try to hug this feet number a bit, so if there are 2,000 feet left, I start to not be much faster than 20 and so on. 1,000 feet, 10. May have a bit more speed than the feet number, so that you can do a bit of stretch braking at the end, applying brakes and at the same time power, so that the train gets stretched and that you can start the train without slack in between. What supposedly is the thing that you want to do when you're starting a train in the level ground. When you're doing a hill start, you're sometimes quite happy that you have some slack in your train, so you don't have to accelerate all the cars at once. But apparently starting the train without slack is the friendliest thing that you can do to your couplers. Chilly a bit, you have to wait a little bit more, a little bit longer. I'm almost there, it's only 1,600 feet. And then we can go out. No! Don't pull at the cord. So I phoned it up and trams are going there with max 15. Oh, thank you for looking this up. Well, this must be a fun curve to drive through then. So the thing for stretch braking, to be able to apply some power, you need to remove the dynamics, wait 10 seconds. So I have no idea if that is too much stretch braking at the end or too little. There are 200 feet left. Train is almost stalling. Throttle 5 into stretch braking might be a bit much, huh? Stretch braking is not actually a thing that you do on a Train Sim World train. But I've seen some videos from Run 8, I think, where they do this all the time. Those are long 50 feet still left. Okay, that is that. That was my interpretation of stretch braking. It took us 1:38, so those services are long enough if you drive them and heed what the signals tell you and not just go through it with line speed. I'm really happy that I have this DLC. It is a great one. And even though the brake physics are a bit strange, the scenery is adorable and it is fun. And I especially like that there are some branching lines and you're not only going from A to B and B to A, but there are those options and those side tracks and these pathing options that make it really a versatile DLC. And I just love the Norfolk Southern liveries. With this impression, I thank you very much for bearing with me today. Thank you CD Radar for your input. Thank you very much AJ for your moderation. And probably next Sunday for the next stream. Take care, have a good week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.